Welcome back to Jackson County Building Zion. This time we are doing chapters 4, 5, and 6. Chapter 4. Well, Mom, what do you think? Brett asked after he told her about his interview with the stake president. 2 weeks after the temple announcement, Brett got called into the stake president's office, asking him to serve among the people in Jackson County. He wasn't told of all of what he would be doing, just that he'd be helping to prepare the people for the temples and independence. For a while, Mom just sat there trying to soak it in. She didn't look upset or frightened, just focused on what he had said. She, of course, knew what this meant. There was a lot involved in that calling. It was a tremendous responsibility, but also a great opportunity for Brett. The dark brown front room sofa was now vacant for everyone but Brett, Mom, and Dad. Brett had told them everything from the beginning. Before he had even gotten to the end of it, Dad was smiling for his son. Just across the room from the sofa, he could see how much Brett had grown up so quickly. Looking at the top of the piano, he gazed at the pictures, starting with Brett as a baby, then his elementary school years, not too many of the awkward teenage years, except his Eagle Scout picture. Then there was the latest one, his missionary picture. Words could not describe how proud he was of Brett. Of course, he knew this would be hard. Brett had just gotten home, and already he was going to be leaving them again. He knew Brett wouldn't turn it down, though. There was no question in his mind. He was more worried about how his wife would take it. While they were talking in the soft light of the lamp by the couch, Brett watched Mom and Dad's faces, but mostly Mom's. He knew Dad would expect him to go and be proud of him for it. It was Mom that he worried about. He remembered her reaction when he got the call to Iraq. I'm not sure how she ever got over the shock, but eventually she did. Well, how did Savannah take it? Mom asked. I haven't told her yet. I'm not sure how she's going to take it. Her face had remained calm, but now there was a look of concern. But it wasn't for Brett's sake, it was for Savannah. Mom had been watching Savannah's progress, and she knew just how much Brett cared for her. Then to watch her grow and progress so much in her conversion, she knew this would be hard for both of them. Maybe you should just try being honest and explaining it to her, Mom suggested. Yeah, I know, but it's just going to be so hard. Brett knew he could explain the importance of the event, but there was still the issue of Brett leaving. He had finally come back home. Savannah had waited patiently and also learned more about the gospel. She hadn't been baptized yet, but Brett could feel things were getting close. What are you worried about, son? Dad asked. I know I'll be fine, Dad. It's Savannah I'm worried about. I don't want my having to leave affecting her conversion. Dad looked carefully at Brett. He knew what he should say, but he also didn't want to hurt his son's feelings. Brett, I know it's hard to see because you were on your mission, but you going out there had a great impact on Savannah's progression. Really? Yeah, she's even gone to a few firesides, and she's told us about the great lessons she's learned from the Book of Mormon, Mom added. Brett knew Mom and Dad were right, but it was still a hard thing. He didn't want to leave her again, and maybe it was more than her becoming converted. Maybe he had really missed her and wanted to be around her more. Even though it was late and Brett's day was getting to be extremely long, he knew he had needed to talk to Savannah. At least make her understand the importance of the calling he had received. He didn't have to tell her he had already made up his mind to go yet. He wanted her to come to that conclusion on her own. Of course he was going to go. There was really no other option, and this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Walking out to the car, he already started to feel weird. He hadn't been on his own for such a long time, and he was still getting used to that feeling. It wasn't bad, but for some reason he was finally able to really think clearly. He felt like his head was finally screwed on a bit. He was actually home now, and would be working on the greatest church project in the history of the church very soon. It had hit him with such force that it was hard to deny the spirit he felt. Going over it in his mind, Brett really started to realize what he'd be doing. He loved the temple and missionary work. He loved explaining the blessings of the temple to old and new members. He could explain in a way where people would really understand that the temple truly is a piece of heaven on earth. In no time at all, Brett pulled up to Savannah's house. After ringing the doorbell, Savannah's parents told him she was downstairs. Since they knew Brett was such an upstanding kid, they never worried about sending him down there to be alone with her. They knew nothing ever happened. In truth, they liked his influence on her, to a certain extent. Of course, Brett had become quite the good friend, at least that's how they made him feel, so they didn't mind Brett trying to talk to her. "Savannah, it's me. Can I come in?" Standing outside her door at the end of the hall across from the pantry, Brett felt right back at home. He was sure he was doing the right thing. "Brett, what are you doing here?" "I wanted to come talk to you about something that happened today." "It's okay, you can come in. You don't have to stay out in the hallway." Seeing Savannah with her sweet, innocent face, he almost didn't want to ruin her day. But another part of him knew that if he didn't tell her that the same day he found out, she'd never forgive him. "So, I got extended a calling from the stake president today." "Wow, the stake president? What are they doing, calling you to be bishop of something?" Savannah joked. "No, nothing like that. Do you remember that temple announcement President Thatcher made in General Conference?" "Yeah, the Independence, Missouri temple thing?" "Yeah, that's the one." Brett knew he just needed to come out and say it, but for some reason he couldn't find the words. "Come on, you can tell me, Brett. What is it? What does it have to do with those temples?" "Well, that's just it, Savannah. I got called to serve in Missouri during the temple project." Savannah looked stunned. She seemed lost. She had so many questions she didn't know where to start. However, she did realize this meant he was leaving again, and she already hated him for it. She was so angry at him that she couldn't think of any questions. "I don't know what to say. I don't understand. Is this like another mission? Because you already went on one." "Kind of, yes. I'll be helping prepare the people for the temples." Savannah was so frustrated, but she could see Brett was happy about this calling, and she didn't want to ruin it for him. It was taking all the energy she had to not yell at him in anger. She needed to get rid of him fast before she exploded with rage. "Fine, Brett. Thank you for coming by and telling me." Brett could see she wasn't really fine, but he wasn't sure if he should press it or not. Savannah had hoped that Brett would get the hint to leave, but he still stood there, as if there was more to say. She got it. He was leaving, and that was all that mattered to her. "I said I'm fine, Brett. You can go home now." Brett wasn't buying him. "Well, you may be fine, but I'm not. Don't you know how hard it was for me to come tell you? I mean, I just got home. I don't want to leave you again." "Oh, yeah, because it was so hard for you to leave me the first time. Try watching somebody leave and go to Iraq for 2 years," Savannah said, slamming her door, not able to hide her anger anymore. That had stung. He thought Savannah might bring that up again, but it came too quickly for Brett. Tears welled up in his eyes without warning, and he couldn't speak. He just sunk down to the floor and cried. He wanted to wait until he could speak again. It was in the middle of his crying that Savannah opened the door and placed a hand on his shoulder. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that. This is just hard for me to handle. And I thought you didn't care what it would do to me. I guess I was wrong." Brett's crying started to slow, and he was able to speak again. "I know this is really hard on you, and I'm so proud of you for the woman you've become. I've really missed you. I've never stopped thinking about you." Hearing Brett's words, Savannah started to feel a bit better. She felt that she really had made a lot of good strides since he'd been gone, and she'd learned a lot about the gospel and what Brett really believes in. So it was really good for him to notice her changes so quickly. "So I guess you want to talk about this temple business, huh?" Savannah asked. "Well, I think it's only fair to you. I mean, I know you probably have a lot of questions you want to ask me about it, so I'll try to answer them. Let me tell you a little more about it first, okay?" "Okay, I'm listening." Brett couldn't have hoped for a better moment. At the same time, he was going to let her feel the spirit and also explain more about the temple. He knew that if he did his job right, that she would really understand that he needed to go. There was really no other option. "Do you have your scriptures?" Brett asked. "Yeah, why?" "I want to read you some things about this temple." "There's scriptures about the temple they want you to build?" Savannah seemed very surprised. So far from what she understood, she was reading about a people and a time long ago where they had some experiences that helped her. She didn't realize there were things about our day in there yet. Okay, so in the Doctrine and Covenants, section 101, 69 through 71, it says, "And in order that all things be prepared before you, observe the commandment which I have given concerning these things, which saith or teacheth to purchase all the lands with money, which can be purchased for money, in the region round about the land which I have appointed to be the land of Zion, for the beginning of the gathering of my saints. All the land which can be purchased in Jackson County, and the counties round about, and leave the residue in my hand." So wait, These 24 temples are going to cover all of Jackson County? Savannah asked. Well, no, not exactly. There are 24 temples, but according to Joseph Smith, the 24 temples will be on a 63-acre lot. Okay, so I understand that God commanded the saints to buy the property, but I still don't understand why it is so important. I mean, we already have like 200 temples. Why is it called the land of Zion there anyway? Well, really anywhere where the saints are gathered together and are of one purpose and of one mind, that's Zion. When we build the temples there, all the saints will come together in purpose because they know that the building of Jackson County temples ushers in the second coming of Christ. Just as he said it, Brett realized it may have been too much for Savannah. He couldn't help but be passionate about this project and what it implied. However, he also knew that he might have created some worry in her. He had mentioned it would usher in the second coming, and for Savannah right now, that may seem a lot scarier than what it should be. Looking at him, Savannah wasn't sure what to say. With the little bit she just learned about the project, she knew it was extremely important, and that Brett really did need to go, but she didn't really feel like talking about it anymore. She had a lot of questions about the temple still, but now she just felt overwhelmed. Savannah was still new to learning about the gospel. She had read the entire Book of Mormon, but had yet to take Moroni's challenge of praying to God to ask if the book was true. She did love going to firesides and hearing about Christ and the gospel, but that was about where she was at. Brett, can I ask you something? Sure, anything. He was glad that she had finally broken the silence. He was afraid that he had scared her with too much information. She didn't look scared or worried, though. She actually looked kind of impatient and a little annoyed. Did you really miss me when you were in Iraq, or were you just saying that? Looking into her eyes, he knew the doubt she was feeling, and it was understandable. Not many people are willing to sacrifice so much to going out and serving the Lord. Savannah, of all the things I had to sacrifice in order to go on a mission, sacrificing my time with you was one of the hardest. Do you really mean that? I mean, we weren't all that serious before you left. I know, but you already meant so much to me. I knew from the first time I met you how special you were. That was why it was so hard to leave. This was one point in which Savannah tried to get inside Brett's mind. She really wanted to understand why he and other Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints people acted this way. I just really want to understand this, Brett. So if you really cared about me, and it was so hard to leave me, then why did you do it? Why is it you needed to go on a mission so badly? Brett knew this would come up someday. He had explained it a little bit before he left, but it still just didn't sink in. Savannah would need more time and would need more interaction with the church before she would understand the importance of missionary work. Savannah, do you know the message we teach people in the mission field? Yeah, you teach them the gospel. That's right. But especially in Iraq, people are so lost as to what they're doing here on earth, when they were where they were before and where they're headed after this life. We teach them all of that. Can you imagine how lost people are without that knowledge? So you're willing to sacrifice time with me to bring people that knowledge? Yes. Does that make sense? I guess so, but what about this temple? What will happen to us when you go to help on this project? I care about you too much to let you slip away. I'm not gone yet. We still have time before I go. So you've already decided then, you're going? Savannah, I have to. Chapter 5. Brett hadn't slept like that in a long time. Waking up alone in his room was strange enough for him, but then waking up at 10:30 was even more unusual. His body had woken up at 6 like he had been doing the past 2 years, but then, after his early morning scripture study, Brett realized he was not in the mission field anymore, so he fell back to sleep. It was such a great feeling for him, staying in his nice, warm, and safe bed, letting his body rest from so much labor. Still, he was Brett Larson, and he knew there was hard work to do, and his mind wouldn't let his body rest for too long. There was always work to be done, and first thing was first. He needed to call the stake president and let him know he would be joining the work effort on the temple project. Walking up the stairs, Brett could smell the eggs that had been frying that morning, and he had missed a good breakfast. Looking in the fridge, however, Brett saw that Mom had saved him some on a plate. The warm, buttery, salty taste of the eggs, mixed with his cold glass of orange juice, brought his body to life that morning. So much so that he almost couldn't wait to get to Jackson County to get started. So, Mom, I just wanted to let you know that I'm calling the stake president this afternoon to accept the call to work on the temple project. It was that easy of a decision, huh? Of course. I know it's what I need to be doing. Okay, well, let me know how the call goes. I will. Brett wasn't sure why he was so nervous about calling. He knew he needed to accept the call, and he knew he needed to go to work. Maybe it was the uncertainty of things still. He wasn't exactly sure what he would be doing, really working on, or what he'd need to bring. He wasn't sure where he would be living or how his living would be paid for either. But then the Scripture and Doctrine and Covenants came to his mind. D&C 84:81. Therefore, take ye no thought for the morrow, for what ye shall eat, or what ye shall drink, or wherewithal ye shall be clothed. He'd be going to work for the Lord. He needn't worry about anything else, because the Lord would protect him just like he did while he was in Iraq. Dialing the number on the letter, Brett was ready to give his answer. This is Dave. Yes, this is Brett Larson. You extended a call to me to work on the Independence Temple project? Yes. Brother Larson, how are you? Did you talk it over with your family? Yes, I did. I just wanted to call and confirm that I would be accepting the call. Thank you for your willingness to serve, good brother. Further instructions will be sent out to you shortly. Thank you very much, President. Goodbye. And just like that, in such a very short phone call, Brett's life was set on the path that would change him forever. It was such an exciting feeling for him. He wanted to know where he would be staying and what he'd be doing, and there were still so many questions that he had. But it would be wonderful, being able to work on such a glorious project. He did know a few things about the Independence Temple project, but he wanted to know more. He wanted to research and really ignite the love he already had for this work. So he went to work on his research, looking up Joseph Smith's original documents on the temple. He also looked at the photos of the area and how big it would supposedly be. He was excited to learn so much about the temple. He couldn't wait to go and get started with his new life. In all his excitement, however, he was afraid he was forgetting Savannah. He really needed a solid plan with her. He had told her that they still had time left before he would leave and that he would never forget her. Somehow they would make this long-distance thing work out, but really, how was Brett going to do it? The first impression and thought that came to his mind was to embrace it all. Just embrace what was going to happen and let Savannah in on all of it. She shouldn't be left out of anything. When Brett receives his shopping list, he would invite Savannah to help him. When he leaves for Missouri, Savannah will be part of that as well. On that part, however, he wasn't as sure. Savannah didn't want to watch him leave on his mission, so watching him leave for Missouri may be out of the question. Thinking about her, Brett started wondering what would happen if Savannah were to come with him to Missouri, or if that was even possible. She wasn't set in stone on going to Wyoming State yet, and maybe she would want to go to Missouri. Maybe she could go to the University of Missouri or some other college nearby. Then they would still be able to see each other. It was strange for him, thinking about all of this, because Brett wasn't nervous at all about his call to serve on the project. He was concerned about what would happen to Savannah. Maybe he wasn't ready to leave her again. But then again, asking her to come to Jackson County may seem like a selfish act on his part. There were so many thoughts running through his mind on the subject. He really needed clarity on it. In his life, getting clarity on something usually meant going to Laramie River to fish. It would have been great to go to the temple, but the last session of the day was about to start. It had been a good day so far. Brett had done some work around the house. He made the call about the letter, and he started to get some things together for his move to Jackson County. It was nearing dinner time now, and Brett figured after he ate, maybe he'd have time to go out and do some night fishing to get some answers about what he needed to do. "So how did your phone call go this afternoon?" Mom asked Brett. "It was fine. Nothing much happened. He just asked if I'd talked it over with you guys, and then he thanked me and let me know they'd be sending me some more information." "And how soon is it again that you need to be down there?" "I'm not exactly sure, but he mentioned the project would begin in 2 weeks, so I'd assume then." "Well, I guess it's a good thing that you still have good luggage." "Yeah." Brett wasn't as much in the conversation as he needed to be. Mom noticed his hesitance, like she usually did. "Are you nervous at all?" "No, it's not that. I'm excited. I get to help work on the most important Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints temple in history." "What is it then?" "I just need to go think about some things, Mom. I'm going to go night fishing for a bit. I won't be too long." "Do you mind if I come along?" I asked. "We haven't hung out in so long." The family could see that he just wanted to be alone, so we let him go. We knew it was best to let him work on things on his own. Brett was kind of stubborn that way, but it was a good thing. You could teach him things and tell him the right things to do, but until Brett made up his own mind about it or tried it for himself, he wouldn't budge. That's the way his faith worked as well. He always wants to test it. He knows that by doing certain things he will be blessed, so he exercises his faith to see the blessings he will get. He does have full confidence in the Lord and what he's able to do, so it isn't very hard for Brett to test his faith. He just needs to do it. Still, we had shared a room since we were little, and it was time we caught up with one another, so Brett let me tag along. The shadows of dust surrounded the small grove of trees where Brett and I were to fish. It was one of his hobbies he had missed the most during the last 2 years. It was a beautiful night with a soft, gentle breeze like Brett wanted it to be. For him, it was his own sacred grove of trees. He had gone there to pray just as Joseph Smith did in his sacred grove. Brett had a very moving experience when he went there to pray for the first time about the Book of Mormon. He'd been taught by his parents as well as by great Sunday school teachers about the importance of the Book of Mormon. But as per usual with Brett's faith, he needed to try things out for himself. So when he was about 10 years old, Brett took his scriptures with him one Sunday afternoon to a place he had picked out before. He decided he would follow Moroni's challenge after reading the Book of Mormon. So with that in mind, he took his scriptures to the little grove of trees near the bend in the river. For Brett, he had always felt this was a very sacred spot. Kneeling down to pray, Brett didn't see anyone or have any voice to speak to him. He just had an overwhelming feeling that the book was true and that he needed to live according to its teachings. As he entered the little grove that night to fish, Brett had a feeling that he would have a similar experience. He figured on just having an overwhelming feeling about the right thing to do with Savannah. "So how's school been going?" Brett asked. "It's going all right. High school's been a bit different without you and your gang, though." "Why's that?" "I don't know. I still have my friends, but it was different hanging out with the seniors, you know?" "Yeah, I know. I went through the same thing with the twins," Brett laughed. It was really good talking with him, but suddenly I felt tired and weak. I wasn't sure what had hit me, but I needed to go home and lie down. "Brett, I'm not feeling very good. I think I'll head back home and go to bed," I said. "Are you okay? Do you want me to take you back?" "No, I'll be all right. You can stay. I'll see you tomorrow." I'm sure I made Brett nervous by my actions, but soon after I left, he calmed down and continued to fish. The sacred spot to Brett was a sight for sore eyes. It wasn't that Iraq didn't have its qualities. It did. But there was nothing like the feeling of being home. So before setting out to fish, Brett knelt down to pray about Savannah. "Dear Father in heaven, I come before you at this time to pray for thy guidance. I thank thee for the opportunity that I have to work on thy temple in Missouri. I thank thee for the successes that I had in Iraq, serving thy people. I thank thee for my family, for the love and support they have shown to me throughout my life. I thank thee for Savannah, for her presence in my life. Heavenly Father, at this time I pray for thy guidance of thy Spirit to help me with Savannah and our situation. I know she was brought into my life for a reason, and I know that she is one of thy choice daughters. I also know that I was called and need to go work on thy temple. I pray that as I consider my options and consider what's best for Savannah, that I will have the guidance of thy Spirit. Once again, I thank thee for all my many blessings. And I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. As Brett stood up from his emotional heartfelt prayer, he didn't have any overwhelming feelings about what he needed to do. He did feel the peace of the Spirit, and that he had done the right thing by bringing his thoughts and feelings to God. He knew he simply had to wait, and his answer would be given to him when he needed it. Brett knew that the best bait for night fishing on this part of Laramie River were his large worms, especially for the catfish he was hoping to catch. There was something so completely relaxing about fishing at night by himself. He could take in the wonder and beauty of God's creations and really feel of the great peace that the Spirit brings. After a half an hour or so of fishing, Brett finally felt that all-familiar tug of a fish on his line, just like it hadn't been 2 years since he last fished. Brett pulled the fish up onto the shore with no problem. It was a great-looking catfish, probably about 3.5 pounds. His family would no doubt find it funny that Brett was able to catch a fish on his first attempt back on the river. Nice fish. Brett had been alone for almost an hour, and there hadn't been any signs of anybody around. Then to hear her voice above any other seemed strange. He almost didn't want to turn around for fear of the dream leaving him. For it had to be a dream. Maybe this was an answer to his prayer earlier. I said, nice fish. That is you, isn't it, Brett? Quickly turning around, it was actually Savannah in the flesh. What are you doing out here? Brett was finally able to ask. I could ask you the same thing. I'm fishing. I can see that. As Savannah got closer to Brett, he could see that worried look on her face. There was a lot on her mind, and it worried Brett that she wasn't confiding in him. Since they had met, she always said that she had felt safe with him. Now to have her not confide in him must mean there was something great weighing on her mind. Are you all right, Savannah? Brett, do you mind if I ask you something? Sure, anything. How do you know when the Spirit is really speaking to you and it's not just your own voice in your head? Brett smiled to himself at the question. It was one of the most typical younger generation questions he had come across. Still, Savannah was pretty new at everything, and for her it was an interesting question. Savannah, do you remember the first time you prayed? Yeah, it was just before I was going to start reading the Book of Mormon. And how did you feel after you were done? Peaceful, I guess. Was that the strongest feeling you had, or were there others? I suppose there were others, but peace was the strongest one. The Spirit is what helps you to feel that peace. That is why you felt it stronger than the others. So whatever feeling I have, or whatever voice I have in my head that's the strongest, that would be the Spirit? Most of the time, yeah. It was hard not being in the loop of things. Usually with Brett, Savannah wouldn't hide anything. Brett could tell there was some purpose behind these questions. There was something that Savannah wasn't telling him, and he didn't know why she was keeping it from him. Thank you, Brett. It was just something I needed help with. Of course. Brett was secretly hoping that she would get into things further, but she wasn't. He was going to remain in the dark about this. Well, I better be heading back home. Do you want to walk back with me? Brett was really asking because he wanted more time with her, where she would hopefully open up more. No, I'm okay. I want to stay for a little bit. There was something about the way she said that made Brett feel at ease. He needed to trust her like he trusts the Lord. He didn't need to know the reason for everything. He just needed to trust that she needed to stay behind for something and just leave it at that. After Brett had left the area and Savannah was sure that she was alone, she knelt down to pray. Dear God, thank you for Brett's safe return from his mission, and thank you for his friendship and kindness towards me. This isn't really like me, but I need your help and guidance. I want to feel peace with the choice Brett has made to work on the temple. I also need help for myself as I consider my options as to where I should go to school and what I should study and do. Thank you for your Spirit and the confirmation I have felt knowing I'm one of your daughters. I love you so much, and I know that with your help anything is possible. I also need strength to be able to accomplish the things that I know you want me to do. Please guide me down those paths that I should go. Again, I love you very much, and I am so grateful for all my many blessings. Amen. Chapter 6. It seemed that all I needed was a good night's sleep. I had awoken the next morning, rested and ready to head back to school. It seemed that Brett had stayed out late because he was still sleeping when I left. Brett had hoped that by sleeping in he would have received inspiration concerning what he should do about Savannah and his calling to Jackson County. He'd secretly hoped that the direction he needed to take in this new stage of his life would have been revealed in a dream somehow, but that wasn't the case. He had awoken the next morning, not with any big thoughts or impressions, but something did happen that he hadn't expected. Things started out fairly normal, a glass of orange juice, some grape nuts, some toast, nothing out of the ordinary. Then the phone call came. Brett, it's for you. It's Savannah. Thanks, Dad. After grabbing the phone and walking down to his room, Brett was surprised by how happy Savannah sounded. Ever since she left the party, things were so different between them. Then there was the night before when she was acting so strange. Hearing her sound like her old self was great, but he knew something was up. So how was fishing last night? Catch anything other than the one catfish? No, that was it. How are you doing this morning? I'm good. I was wondering what your plans were for today. Brett started wondering where this was going. I'm not sure yet. Why? I just thought maybe you're going shopping for things you'll need in Missouri. Brett paused for almost too long. Savannah sounded too happy about this. He had thought maybe she'd try to talk him out of going, but this wasn't the case. It almost sounded like she wanted to help him. Maybe she decided she would go down with him somehow. Yeah, I may go shopping. I'm not exactly sure about what I need to buy yet. I was wondering if I could go with you. I figured you might need some help. Sure, that'd be great. I'll come pick you up after lunch. Okay, see you then. Brett wasn't sure why, but this shopping excursion was making him kind of nervous. It just seemed like Savannah wasn't being herself. He almost wished that she would try to keep him from going, or that she would at least voice her opinion louder or something, but she wasn't. He felt even more nervous than when they went on their first date. That was almost 6 years ago now. Brett had been 16 for maybe a month. He had his driver's license and Dad's permission to borrow the car. Our family had always liked Savannah, ever since the day Brett told them about how he had saved her. It was a beautifully warm spring day in Missouri. Brett and Savannah had become closer as friends since they had a few classes together. One day at school, Brett finally got up the courage to ask Savannah out. Her reaction was that she needed to think about it and she'd get back to him. He had asked her in second period just right before lunch. Apparently, she wanted to talk it over with some of her friends and get their feelings on it. At the end of the school day, when Brett was walking towards the bus, Savannah walked over to him and told him that she'd love to go out. Savannah's friends told her that Brett was a nice guy, but sometimes he was too religious. So long as he kept his religion to himself, they told Savannah that she'd have a great time. Brett didn't know this until years later when Savannah had told him. So on the bus ride home, Brett tried to plan out what they could do that weekend. Of course, there was always fishing, but then thinking about it, Brett realized that was more of a guy's night out thing. He didn't know if Savannah was into fishing anyway. He didn't know that she liked camping and He did know that she liked camping and the outdoors, though. It was all getting to be a bit much for him. He knew asking Savannah out was a great idea. He just hadn't thought it all the way through as to what he should do with her. Then it came to him. When he was a Boy Scout, one of his favorite merit badges was astronomy. He knew quite a bit about the stars, and he knew a great field for stargazing. So he could take her out to dinner, then they could grab some dessert and bring it to the field where he could show her what he knew about the stars. Once he had the date thought through, he figured he wouldn't feel as nervous anymore, but he was wrong. He was still just as nervous as before. Even talking with her at school was awkward. He hoped that by asking her out that he wouldn't ruin their friendship. Finally, the weekend came, and it was time for their date. It was a beautiful Saturday night. Brett had decided he would take her to Bailey's restaurant and patio. They had a great meatball sub there, and it was one of the more popular restaurants for the high school crowd. When he stopped at her house to pick her up, his nervousness was at its peak. He could feel his heartbeat pushing out of his chest, making him sweat. He walked up to the front door, not really knowing what to expect, and then it happened. The night changed completely for Brett once Savannah opened the door. Her orange blonde hair that was usually straight or in a ponytail was long and wavy. Her eyes were lit up and her lips were full and red. She was wearing a lilac-colored dress shirt and blue faded jeans. She looked absolutely amazing. Then she spoke, enhancing the spell that she was putting Brett under. So, do I look okay? I wasn't sure how I needed a dress, and I didn't know where we were going. You look great. It was more than Brett thought he would be able to get out. He actually talked a lot more than he thought he would on the date. They both felt that way. Savannah had gone into the date thinking that nothing would really come of it but a fun night, and Brett had gone into it not really knowing what he would get out of it either. All he knew was that he wanted to ask her out. Sitting on that blanket in the field, looking up at the stars, Brett and Savannah talked even more openly. So can I ask you something, Brett? Sure. Why did you want to ask me out? I thought it'd be fun, and I wanted to get to know you better. Did you like being friends with me? You mean we're not friends anymore? Brett said jokingly. No, we are. It's just this date kind of changes the friendship we had, doesn't it? It doesn't have to. What if it just enhances what we already had? Yeah, I guess that's possible. So Brett went on talking about the stars and about fishing and other things. It had been a great night. It wasn't nearly as nerve-wracking as Brett thought it would be. Savannah was very easy to talk to, and she had a very sweet spirit about her. Of course, they'd been able to talk and were good friends before the date, but Brett had secretly worried that things would change, just like Savannah had thought. Well, thanks for agreeing to come out tonight, Savannah. It was fun. Yeah, we should do this again sometime. Sounds good. Brett didn't know it at the time, but Savannah was putting off all kinds of signals that she wanted Brett to kiss her, but he didn't. She would tell him about it years later. As Brett remembered that first date, he realized that it was not all that different. He didn't really have to worry at all. This was Savannah, after all. The easiest girl to talk to. At least that's how it was most of the time. Besides that, Savannah seemed great with things. It shouldn't be awkward at all going out shopping with her. So lunch was over, and Brett had told Mom and Dad he was going out shopping with Savannah. The only things he really knew he needed were some more white shirts and work clothes. He had grown too much over the last 2 years to be able to fit into the clothes he had. Driving that old road back to Savannah's house, Brett started to realize he may only have 2 more weeks in this place. And then he may be in Jackson County for the rest of his life. What if he really loves it there? What if construction takes many years? Then the ultimate question, what if Christ comes very soon after it's built? Of course, Brett shouldn't really worry about all of these things. He knew that putting his trust in the Lord and working for him with all his might was all he needed to do. The rest would be taken care of. Besides, there were still other things that needed to happen before Christ would return to the earth again. This temple project was really just one of the many things that needed to happen first. Still, it was amazing to think about. All of the earthly pains and sorrows finally being over. It was difficult to fully comprehend that. So where are we going first? Savannah asked. I thought we'd go to the hardware store first. I need to pick up some good work clothes. It was good talking with Savannah, but she was really acting different. Brett wanted to ask her what was going on, but he was afraid that maybe she was just putting on a brave front for him, and that he shouldn't question him. Brett, I need to tell you something, Savannah asked as they started walking toward the hardware store. What is it? I saw you praying in the woods the other night. You did? Brett said with shock. Don't worry, I couldn't hear you or anything. Oh, well, no worries. Savannah had been hoping that Brett would open up and tell her why he was praying, but maybe it was too personal. Still, Savannah realized that she was Brett's girlfriend. They were supposed to be open about everything. Maybe his prayer was personal, but he didn't have to share everything about it. She was just curious, and maybe it would help her understand the answer to her prayer as well. You don't want to tell me what you're praying about? Savannah finally got up the courage to ask. Brett stopped before walking to the store. He looked carefully at Savannah, trying to decide why she wanted to know this and if he should tell her or not. I was praying about you, actually. Me? Why were you praying about me? It's you who's been called to do this great thing. It's you who needs the help, right? That's true, Savannah, but to be honest, I was worried about you. I know I need to do this, but I feel like there's something I need to do for you. I can't abandon you again. I see. So what was your answer? Brett looked at her with a smile on his face. Savannah wanted to know what Brett was going to do about her while he was off working on the temple. Unfortunately, he didn't know yet. I'll let you know when I know, Brett said with a smile. That would be good, seeing as how it does concern me and all. Did you ever think to ask me what I want to do? I thought you wanted to go to Wyoming State and study psychology. Well, I did, but now I'm not so sure. Brett looked at her more intently. It seemed that maybe the reason for Savannah's recent behavior was starting to come out. What do you mean? Well, don't make a big deal out of it, but last night after you left, I prayed as well. I wanted to feel more at peace with your decision, and I wanted guidance for myself as to what I should do. That's great, Savannah. So how do you feel about things? Reaching for the brown overalls off the rack, Savannah held them up to Brett to check the size. I feel like I need to be supportive of your decision, but I still don't really know what I'm supposed to do. Reaching out for her hands, Brett looked thoughtfully at Savannah. He couldn't ask for a more supportive girlfriend. She had waited patiently while he was away on his mission. She had agreed to take the discussions and read the Book of Mormon. She wasn't ready to get baptized just yet, but she had progressed quite a bit. Savannah, no matter what happens, I don't ever want to do anything to mess up what we have. Thank you for being supportive of me. I know it isn't always easy. Once that elephant in the room was finally addressed, it was like old times again. They could talk as freely as they once did. They didn't have to guess about what the other one was thinking because they knew where each other was coming from now. So Savannah was going to be supportive, and Brett was going to Missouri. The Lord would reveal the rest in time.